Hey everyone, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying these deep dives. Today we're diving into a story that's got the media world in a frenzy.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We're talking about the LA Times,
Uh-huh.
a billionaire owner, and a decision about the upcoming election that's got everyone talking.
Really raises some eyebrows.
So let's set the stage.
Okay.
2 weeks before the election, the LA Times is getting ready to make their presidential endorsement.
Right. Gearing up for it.
And then bam, the owner, Patrick Soon-Shiong, a billionaire, by the way,
Oh, yeah.
steps in and says, nope,
Wow.
no endorsements for either candidate.
That's pretty unusual, isn't it? For a major newspaper.
Definitely raises questions.
Yeah, about editorial independence. You know, that idea that journalists should be free to report and express opinions without interference from owners or anyone else.
And the fallout from this has been huge.
Oh, yeah.
We're not talking a few angry tweets here.
No.
We're talking resignations,
Really?
including a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist.
What?
Think about that for a second. Leaving a prestigious job on principle.
Yeah, that says a lot.
They felt something was seriously wrong.
Definitely a strong statement about journalistic integrity. You know, these journalists are putting their careers on the line to stand up for their principles.
It makes you wonder if they felt they couldn't do their jobs properly under these new restrictions.
Right, and it raises concerns about self-censorship among the journalists who are still at the paper.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? That this decision could have a ripple effect through the whole newsroom.
Definitely a cause for concern.
And to make things even more interesting, Soon-Shiong has been criticizing the readers who are canceling their subscriptions in protest.
Oh, wow.
He's saying that they're the ones hurting democracy.
That's certainly adding fuel to the fire.
Right. It's like he's dismissing the concerns of the readers who feel betrayed by the LA Times, and it further damages the trust between a newspaper and its readers.
Absolutely. Trust is so fragile.
It's ironic, isn't it? He's accusing people of hurting democracy by choosing where they get their news.
Yeah, bit of a head-scratcher.
But wait, it gets even more interesting. Trump's campaign is spinning this lack of endorsement as support for their candidate.
Oh, wow. They're really seizing on this.
It shows how even silence can be interpreted as taking a side, especially in a politically charged environment.
Absolutely. Perceptions matter.
So we have journalists feeling ethically compromised,
Right.
readers feeling betrayed,
Yeah.
and a political campaign trying to take advantage of the whole situation.
Talk about a mess.
It really is. The LA Times Guild is now pleading with readers to stick with them, saying subscriptions fund the journalists, not the owner's decisions.
They're in a tough spot.
They really are. So let's dig a little deeper into Soon-Shiong's reasoning here. He said he blocked the endorsement because he wanted to avoid division.
Okay, interesting.
What exactly did he mean by that?
Well, in his statement, he said that endorsing either candidate would just add to the division in the country. He argued that newspapers should present the pros and cons of each candidate and let the readers decide for themselves.
But don't newspapers already do that?
Well, to some extent, yes. They report on the candidates, their platforms, their controversies. Readers can definitely form their own opinions.
But what's so different about an endorsement? Why is everyone making such a fuss?
An endorsement is different. It's a statement from the newspaper's editorial board, which is a group of experienced journalists with a deep understanding of the issues. It's like a judgment call, a recommendation based on their assessment of who would be the better leader.
So by refusing to endorse, is Soon-Shiong saying he doesn't trust his own journalist's judgment?
That's one way to interpret it. It's also possible he's worried about alienating readers who might disagree with the endorsement, potentially impacting subscriptions and the bottom line.
But should financial considerations really influence editorial decisions, especially when it comes to something as important as a presidential election?
That's a big ethical dilemma in journalism. You want to keep editorial decisions separate from business interests, so the reporting stays unbiased. But newspapers are businesses too. They need to make money to survive. And those financial pressures can sometimes create conflicts, even with the best intentions.
It seems like this LA Times situation is a perfect example of that tension.
Absolutely. It's a real-life case study in the challenges facing journalism today. We have resignations, subscriber cancellations, and a political campaign trying to score points. It's a lot to untangle.
Let's start by focusing on those resignations.
Yeah.
What does it say about the state of journalism when experienced professionals feel like they have to quit their jobs over a decision like this?
Well, it suggests a deep concern about journalistic integrity. These journalists felt that Soon-Shiong's actions crossed a line and compromised the LA Times' credibility. They basically said, we can't be a part of this.
It's almost like a vote of no confidence in the owner and where the paper is headed.
Exactly. And It could have a ripple effect, leading to self-censorship among the journalists who stayed. They might be afraid to speak out for fear of what could happen.
So it's not just about the people who left, but also the potential impact on the ones who are still there. Now let's talk about the readers. A lot of them have expressed outrage and disappointment. Some have even canceled their subscriptions.
Right.
What does this tell us about the relationship between a newspaper and its audience?
It highlights how important trust is it. Readers subscribe to a newspaper because they value its reporting, its analysis, its editorial stance. When that trust is broken, they feel let down and they're more likely to walk away.
It's like any relationship. Trust is built over time, but it can be broken in a moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in this case, it seems like the LA Times has damaged that trust.
And then you have the political campaign using this whole thing to their advantage. Trump's team is trying to spin this non-endorsement as some kind of win.
Classic political opportunism. They're trying to fit this situation into their narrative, whatever the LA Times' actual reasoning was.
It reminds us that we need to be critical thinkers, especially with all the information out there. We can't just take things at face value. We have to think about the source, the context, and the motivations behind what we're reading or hearing.
Absolutely. We need to be discerning consumers of information.
So we've got this tangled web of journalistic ethics, media ownership, political maneuvering, and public perception. It's a lot to process.
It really is.
What are your thoughts on all this?
This situation raises some fundamental questions about the role of newspapers in a democracy, the responsibilities of media owners, and the challenges of maintaining journalistic integrity in a world where the media is changing so rapidly.
It's a complex issue with a lot of layers, and we've only just scratched the surface. But that's what we do here on the Deep Dive. We explore these complexities and try to make sense of it all.
And we want you, our viewers, to join the conversation. Share your thoughts, your insights, your questions in the comments below. This is a topic that deserves open and honest discussion. So let's shift gears a little bit and really dig into these resignations, especially the one from Robert Greene.
Oh yeah, the Pulitzer Prize winner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not every day you see someone like that walk away from a prestigious job.
Especially on principle.
And his statement about why he resigned, it's pretty powerful.
What did he say?
He acknowledged that, legally the owner has the right to make these calls.
Sure, the paper is his.
But he also pointed out that it's really troubling because one of the candidates, Donald Trump, has this whole history of attacking the very idea of journalism.
Like what?
Respect for the truth.
Yeah.
Support for democratic processes.
Interesting.
So Greene seems to be saying that by not taking a stand, the paper is basically giving a pass to behavior that undermines the whole foundation of journalism.
Wow, so it's bigger than just the endorsement itself.
Absolutely. It's about the message it sends.
Right. And another resignation really echoes that point.
Oh, who's that?
Corinne Klein, who was also on the editorial board.
Okay.
She argues that by not endorsing at this late stage, it kind of implies that Harris has flaws so serious.
Oh, wow.
That she's basically on the same level as Trump.
That's a really harsh assessment.
It is.
Yeah.
And it suggests that this lack of an endorsement is being seen as a way of supporting the other candidate.
Which is especially troubling given the concerns about Trump.
Exactly. And Klein even uses some pretty strong language.
Like what?
She calls the paper's stance craven and hypocritical.
Oof, those are fighting words.
It's like she's hinting that there might be bigger problems within the LA Times.
Makes you think, huh?
It does. And it brings us back to Soon-Shiong's claim that he wants to avoid division.
Right, that whole unity thing.
But is that a good enough reason to silence the editorial voice of a major newspaper?
Especially during a presidential election.
Yeah. Shouldn't they be leading the conversation, not shying away from it?
It's a good question, and there are definitely different opinions on this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Some people think that in today's polarized world,
It's pretty divided out there.
a newspaper taking a strong stance could make things even worse.
I could see that.
They think a more neutral approach, letting readers come to their own conclusions is more responsible.
Okay, but what about the other side?
Well, as we've seen with the resignations and the backlash from readers, some feel like this decision undermines what the editorial board is supposed to do.
They're supposed to provide guidance, right?
Exactly. Analysis, a clear position on the big issues.
And that's especially important during an election.
Absolutely. They feel like the LA Times is failing to give readers the leadership and insight they expect.
So it's like there's no easy answer.
There really isn't.
Yeah.
Both sides have valid points.
But regardless of how you feel about the endorsement itself, the fallout for the LA Times has been undeniable.
Absolutely.
Mm.
The resignations, the loss of trust from readers, it all creates a real credibility problem for them.
And this goes beyond just the LA Times,
Right. It raises questions about media ownership in general.
especially when you have these billionaires with their own agendas.
Yeah, what happens when their business interests clash with journalistic principles?
That's a scary thought,
It really highlights the need for safeguards to protect journalists.
to make sure they can report freely,
Exactly. They need to be able to hold those in power accountable.
no matter who owns the paper.
And that's crucial for a functioning democracy.
It's non-negotiable.
A free and independent press is like a watchdog, a voice for the people, a platform for different perspectives,
And when that voice is silenced,
or even appears to be compromised.
right, it weakens our whole system.
This LA Times situation really brings that home.
It makes you think about how we can protect journalistic integrity.
Right. How can we make sure editorial decisions are free from outside pressure? How can the public trust what they're reading and hearing?
Those are some big questions.
They are, and they're not just for journalists to figure out.
We all have a role to play.
You have to understand how important a free press is and the threats it faces.
We need to support organizations that value journalistic integrity. So we've talked about the resignations, the loss of trust, the implications for journalism as a whole.
A lot to unpack.
But there's another angle here we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, what's that?
The money, the LA Times Guild is really urging readers to stick with them.
Okay.
They're emphasizing that subscriptions support the journalists, not the owner.
Interesting.
And it highlights a really important point,
What's that?
how newspapers are struggling financially.
Oh, yeah, with the internet and everything.
Exactly. Print
Yeah.
subscriptions are dropping. Competition from online platforms is
It's
rising.
a tough landscape.
And it puts newspapers in a difficult position.
They need to make money to survive,
Right. But they also have to uphold their values,
maintain their integrity.
even if it means making choices that could upset readers or advertisers.
It's a balancing act.
And it seems like the LA Times is caught right in the middle.
So it's not just about the owner's actions, it's about the reality of the news business.
How do you stay true to your principles while also trying to stay afloat?
Right, it's a challenge for the whole industry. Can they stay financially stable without compromising their independence?
Can they create models that prioritize quality journalism?
It's a complex problem that needs some creative solutions.
It does. And a renewed commitment to the core values of journalism.
Truth, accuracy, fairness, independence, accountability.
And this is something we all have a stake in.
Because a healthy democracy needs a healthy press.
This LA Times controversy really reflects the broader challenges facing journalism today.
It's a wake-up call for all of us.
To think critically about the news we consume.
To understand who's controlling the information we're getting.
And to support organizations that are fighting for journalistic integrity and a free press.
Because ultimately the future of journalism and the future of democracy are intertwined.
And that's a responsibility we all share. Okay, so we've talked about the resignations, the impact on readers, even the financial pressures newspapers are facing.
And a lot.
But let's zoom out even more.
Okay.
What does this whole LA Times story tell us about media ownership in general?
Well, it definitely highlights this growing concern about concentrated media ownership.
Especially when it's billionaires calling the shots.
Right. And often these billionaires have all sorts of other business interests.
So it makes you wonder, is there bias?
Are there conflicts of interest? Are dissenting voices being silenced?
Especially when these owners have strong political leanings.
Or when their financial interests could be affected by their media coverage.
It all just adds to the erosion of trust in the media.
And that's really dangerous in a democracy.
Because we need informed citizens to hold those in power accountable.
When people lose faith in the media, they become more susceptible to misinformation.
They can be manipulated more easily.
So this LA Times thing, it's not just an isolated incident.
It speaks to a much larger issue.
One that could have serious consequences for our democracy.
It really shows how important it is to have transparency in media ownership.
We need stronger regulations to prevent too much power being concentrated in the hands of a few.
And we need ways to protect editorial independence.
Because at the end of the day, a diverse and independent media is essential for a healthy democracy.
We need a range of perspectives.
We need those in power to be held accountable.
And we need citizens to have access to reliable information so they can make informed decisions.
This LA Times controversy, it's a wake-up call.
It's a call for all of us to be more critical of the media we consume.
To understand where our information is coming from and who's behind it.
And to support those institutions that are truly committed to journalistic integrity and a free press.
Because without that, our democracy is in trouble.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the LA Times controversy.
Wow, what a ride.
It really was. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you.
Absolutely keep the conversation going.
Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.